Alan and Sean here from the Prancing Pony Podcast, welcoming you to the Tolkien Experience Podcast.
The Tolkien Experience Podcast is an attempt to bring the fan and scholarly communities together around our shared passion, the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Each episode features a notable scholar or member of the fan community sharing their Tolkien experience.
And now we'll send you over to Sarah and Luke.
Thanks, Alan. I'm Sarah Brown.
And I'm Luke Shelton.
Every other week, we share with you an interview of a Tolkien scholar or fan.
That's right. In these interviews, one of us asks our guest to respond to 6 questions that help us learn about their personal Tolkien experience.
We are so excited to share this podcast with you. So without any more delay, let me introduce our guest. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tolkien Experience Podcast. This time I have with me Mina Lukic, and Mina is an academic and a Tolkien fan who is originally from Belgrade in Serbia. She's been an admirer of Tolkien since the age of 13 when she first read The Lord of the Rings, but her favourite is the Silmarillion, and I hope we'll actually get to talk about why that is so during this podcast. Now, although Mina is actually an art historian, she is mostly interested in heritage and cultural memory studies. And since she was able to choose a PhD subject recently, her Tolkien's legacy became a part of her PhD research. And in order to do it properly, she had to come to the UK. And so she ended up attending Oxenmoot in 2018, which was her first encounter with Oxford, the Tolkien Society, and the large group of Tolkien fans in real life. And she loved it. She knew she had to go again, and she ended up also going to Tolkien 2019 and Oxenmoot 2019, and I hear she will be at Oxenmoot this year also. So clearly she has been bitten by the Tolkien Society bug, and it is wonderful to welcome you to our podcast today, Mina. Hello.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight.
No, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to participate in this awesome project. It's a really good thing you're doing there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's also nice to have some international voices on our podcast because I think we need to acknowledge that Tolkien is not just for the British, and it is lovely to have somebody from somewhere outside of the UK and the US talking to us about her love for Tolkien, and it just really emphasizes that Tolkien's work has reached far and wide in the world. So I'm really delighted to have you on the podcast today, Mina.
Thank
So
you.
let's talk about, first of all, how you were first introduced to Tolkien's work. Now, you say you first read it at the age of 13, is that right?
Yeah, I was 13. Well, it happened accidentally. I went to visit a cousin, and I've seen those books accidentally on his shelf. So I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, it could be interesting to you, so you should read it. You should try. And yeah, I borrowed those books and read them in a week, if I remember correctly. So that's how it started. And then I read The Hobbit. And then I tried to read the Silmarillion, but I'm afraid I found it a bit complicated at that age. Clearly I wasn't smart enough to do it at that age. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, I tried, but then it became a bit too complicated at some point, and then I just stopped and did it a couple of years later, and then I really loved it. So it became my favorite among Tolkien works, and it has been since that time till today. That's how it all started. Then the films came soon after I read the books, because I was born in 1988, so basically I was 13 in 2001. So I also love the films, and I guess then there was a period when I had like some sort of pause in terms of interest in Tolkien works, because I was interested in other things. Started studying art history, so the focus changed a bit. But then at some point when I was thinking about doing PhD research, and since I have chosen the interdisciplinary field of studying, when I was thinking about it, what should be a good case study for the things I wanted to do research about, Tolkien came up like an ideal case. So yeah, that's how I decided to go back to Tolkien and see it now from a completely different perspective. So yeah, uh, that's what we're going to talk about in one of the next questions, I guess. How
Yeah.
yeah, my perception of Tolkien has changed over time, but yeah, that's
Yeah, we will definitely come to that. But at the moment, I'm still trying to recover from the fact that you were born in 1988. I'm just lifting myself up off the floor, telling myself I am not as ancient as I feel right this second. But
well,
okay.
I'm not young, so it's like 1988 is now like feeling old when you hear someone who is born in 2001 has 19 years now. That's like frightening for us. So I
Yeah, you're
understand.
not helping. You're not helping me at all here. But yes,
Yeah.
I totally understand what you mean. But I just have one burning question, actually. Just as a matter of interest, when you first read The Lord of the Rings at the age of 13 in 2001,
Yeah.
okay, moving
Before the
past that.
films.
Yes, before the film. Oh goodness, yeah. I'm going to get my walking stick out later and just pretend I'm not ancient. Yeah. Did you, by any chance, did you read them in the original English or did you read
Oh
them
no.
in translation?
Oh no, yeah, I've read them in translation. I wasn't
Uh-huh.
that sort of genius to read them in original in Turkey. Yeah, what's interesting about that, later when I was like probably 16, 17, I started reading books in original. So my memory and my impressions and my knowledge basically was altered when I read them in English again. So I really poorly remember Serbian translation because everything I've read since like 16 was in English. So yeah, it's different experience now. Yeah, I've affected clearly by original text, not by translation.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to me because obviously I don't actually meet that many people in comparison to those who have read it first of all in the original English to those who've read it in translation. Looking back now, I mean, I don't know if you've looked at the Serbian translation more recently, but looking back, what do you think of that translation and the quality of it? It's just a matter of
Hmm.
interest.
Hmm. Okay, so the translation, if I'm correct, the one I've read and the one which is considered the best was published in 1975,
Hmm.
or something like that. I'm not completely sure. And it's republished um, 2 years ago now, because I keep forgetting that we have entered 2020, so it's like I have to go back 2 years. So that translation is considered good. Um, that one. There are some other translations which I don't know much about, but I will have to go back to that translation now when I'm writing my PhD because I have to. I'm writing it in Serbian, so I have to use Serbian translation for all the references, and then I will have to go back. So yeah, that's going to happen soon. I'm going to read it again in Serbian. So after I do it, I could probably tell you more about it. But it is considered good uh, by people who translate books from English. So
It would certainly be interesting to talk with you again at some point after you've gone back to the Serbian translation and had the opportunity to, restudy that and see what you think of it now. Because, I mean, if it was published in 1975, that's some time ago now.
yeah, it is. But the interesting thing is that well, at least that's how it seems to me. that people in those years were more serious and were doing better job than translators today. Some of them are just, using Google Translate or,
Oh dear.
well, I guess, I mean, not when talking books in Serbian language are in question, but, I think all translations can be of better quality actually than the new ones. It's not necessarily the case, but yeah, I will compare it because now
Yeah.
I'm also intrigued by that because I wasn't thinking about it that much.
That would make a fascinating paper for Oxenmoot.
Maybe, maybe, yeah, yeah.
I
For
think I've planted a little seed there, maybe.
yeah, maybe.
Well, thank you. That's really fascinating. But let's go back to where you said that the Silmarillion is your favorite element of Tolkien's work. And let me ask you why.
Well, I think all lovers of Tolkien's works would agree on that it is a work which has the greatest depth in terms of allowing you to explore the world, like the number of stories, characters, the development of the world, the complexity of it is something which allows you to enjoy more, to go back to it more often and find new things all over again every time you go back to it. So I think that's the main reason why it's my favorite. Although I like some other Tolkien's works which are not related to uh, Middle Earth and Arda in general. For example, I really like Reverendum and Father Christmas Letters because they are, works inspired and created for his children, and you can really see a different sort of creativity and love invested in those works. So yeah, I love those as well. Um, which is like a big difference between Silmarillion and Referendum, but
Yes, very much so.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite story in the Silmarillion?
Mm, well, I guess probably Baron and Luthien. Um, although one of my favorite characters is Finrod, actually. Um,
Oh, right.
yeah, because I um, well, we probably identify with characters who have some characteristics we cherish and value in our lives. So I like him because he's loyal and he kept his word and he was willing to sacrifice himself because of the promise he gave. Um, so also in The Lord of the Rings, Sam is one of my favorite characters. Um, so I guess that's what every person does. Like, we always find those characters which we identify with, so they are our favorites. What are your
Yeah.
favorite characters?
Oh, turning it back on me. And that's absolutely fine. Well, interestingly enough, from the Silmarillion, and she doesn't come into the story that much. I really like the character of Melian.
Okay.
Because I think that, again, although she doesn't figure centrally all that much, she's actually incredibly powerful, amazingly powerful. And it's almost like an extra thrown in there that, it's part of her. And I would have loved to have seen more made of that, because to be able to throw a girdle around the part of Middle Earth that she was protecting and protect it in that way makes her a person of extraordinary power. So I really like her. I love the story, even though it's obviously incredibly tragic, Turin Turambar.
Yeah, Turin is my second favorite, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, because that is a great story. But when it comes to The Lord of the Rings, I'm afraid I am also a Sam fan. Very much a
Okay.
Sam fan. Yeah, he's my hero.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love the way in which his character was created. And the fact that he is just so very ordinary. You know, he
Yeah.
doesn't have superpowers. He is not born into like this destiny like Aragorn is or anything like that. He's just a very ordinary hobbit who does something extraordinary. And I think that calls to most of us.
Yeah, I guess. And just simple goodness and kindness and
Yeah, yeah. Which,
loyalty.
you know, I think that's a very important element of Tolkien's work that he says this is the kind of person who can actually be the hero,
Yeah.
just a simple, kind, honest hobbit. And yeah, I think that's actually rather wonderful.
Yeah, I
But
agree. Yeah, and I
but
think
thanks for
many people find that one of the
yeah,
greatest qualities in his characters, I guess.
yeah. But thanks for putting me on the spot there, Mina.
Oh, sorry, but I was interested to hear what are your favorite characters,
Absolutely.
and
No, that's
I
that's
guess
that's great.
the people are interested also to know about your answers rather than only our own. So yeah, it's not bad to ask you sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think at some point probably Luke will interview me and I will interview Luke because why not?
Yeah,
I
why
suppose
not?
it's good to share what we think as well with everybody else. But yeah, okay. So you've talked about the way in which you encountered Tolkien as a young child, and that must be at least one of your fondest experiences of Tolkien's work. Is there another that you can point to?
Um, well, yeah, I think some more recent experiences are, something I um, find more important in terms of meeting new people, meeting Tolkien fandom, uh,
Mm.
which was really a great experience for me. Um, it all started like several years ago when I decided to do a PhD on related to Tolkien. And one of the parts of that research is researching fandom. So I started going to different. Well, I used to go to conventions even before that for fun, but then I started visiting conventions with like some sort of purpose in my mind, and go only to Tolkien related conventions. So probably one of the most important experiences for me was coming to the UK, coming to Oxenwood in 2018. And that was really one of the big Oxenwoods, which had like more than 250 visitors. So I met many people, many interesting people from different countries, different continents, some from Canada, some from the USA, some from France, Italy, and Greece, and basically Finland, like all over the world, and that was really important experience for me. And it's interesting, probably for you as well, that I found out that I was the first person from Serbia to come to Oxenwood
Oh,
in 2018. Uh, and hopefully that number is going to be much bigger in the future, but it was interesting for me that I was the first one from Serbia. Although there are some people who are the members of Tolkien Society, but yeah, obviously uh, not many have visited the events organized by the Tolkien Society. Um, so yeah, after that I was fairly um, sure I'm going to visit again, and then I came to Tolkien 2019 and Oxford 2019, and those were also incredible experiences because I'm not sure if you attended Tolkien 2019?
No, I wasn't at 2019. No.
Okay. Because that was really amazing event, and there were like more than 550 people there, and all the big
Oh,
names.
sorry. Yes. No, of course. Yeah, I was at Tolkien 2019. I was
Ah.
thinking Oxenmoot
Oh,
2019.
okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
We'll go
but
back to the whole feeling old this evening. Yes, I was at Tolkien 2019.
okay.
And you were there, and I didn't know.
Well, there were too many people there, and we couldn't meet everyone, and that was really incredible event. So yeah, many of those memories are related now to people I'm meeting and the events I'm attending. Um, but also one of the two fondest memories or moments related to talking work were also the exhibitions. The one in the Bodleian Library in 2018, and the one in the National Library of France in Paris. Um, well, last year and this year, almost coming to an end now.
Yeah.
So because those two exhibitions were really of huge importance to me as well for seeing all the material that was exhibited there. So yeah, if I had to choose one thing, that's really difficult to do. I'm not sure I can do it. Like there's only one fondest experience.
I think that's rather wonderful. You've got so many fond experiences.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's difficult not to when you're meeting um, people who share the same passion for something you love. So.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to dial back to a few minutes ago. You said that part of your PhD study is actually looking at Tolkien fandom. Do you want to expand on that for me?
Okay. Um, so, since my focus in PhD is related to heritage studies and cultural memory, I was wondering if there are some things which should be investigated related to fandom cultures in terms of heritage, because you usually have the notion of heritage is that's something important for society, we should take care of it. But then you have cases that people actually don't recognize the importance of heritage. Probably not in the UK, you are really conscious about it, but in other countries. So it's difficult for people to relate to something from the past, which seemed like ancient and not really relevant in their own lives. So okay, that's heritage, but why is that important for me? And then you have the opposite case with fandom, with people who invest their time and they have a passion for something. In this case, a literary heritage, and they really recognize some values, and those contents have relevance in their everyday life. So I was thinking about maybe doing some sort of comparison um, with let's say the way fandom is taking care of the things that they love, and get some conclusions which could be applied to heritage theory in general. So that was an initial idea when I started doing research, and then obviously some other questions and other topics uh, have grown from that initial point. And what I did related to fandom research, I did several surveys. Some of them were at conventions, fandom conventions, and one of them, the biggest one, was internet survey, which had more than 2,000 participants. Mm, I did it not last year, in 2018. Um, and the results were really interesting, and I haven't still managed to process all of those results because the answers and the material I've got are different and require a huge amount of time to, um, explain and compare.
Yeah, imagine.
So,
Well, can I ask what sort of questions you were asking?
yeah, what I was interested in primarily is how are people affected by different, one of the questions which is important for my research, um, how are different interpretations of Tolkien's work, which have been created since 50s, how those interpretations in different media like theater, radio, visual media, film, cartoons, music, all those different adaptations and interpretations, how are they affecting the way fandom is imagining Tolkien's fictional world? So, and that's one of the main questions I'm trying to investigate and deal with in my research. Um, and the answers are surprisingly different. But what can be like, I cannot talk about all the answers, but when given a choice, like they had a choice between maybe 10 things to say what affects the way they imagine Middle Earth and its inhabitants the most. Um, top uh, and the top first choice was the books, descriptions from the books, maps, and the source material. So more than 80% of the people said that the books are the main thing which influences the way they imagine that fictional world. The second place were the films by Peter Jackson. And then after that came artworks like by Alan Lee and Ted Naismith and John Howe. So illustrations basically which were officially um, in some of the editions. Mm, and those were like top three influences, and everything else was less than 50%, for example. So, but those are like statistical things now, which are difficult to explain probably in normal conversation. And mm, why is the way people imagine? Why is that basically one of the most important questions for me? I want to. I'm doing a PhD on the modes of remembering Tolkien. So when we talk about remembering Tolkien, there are obviously different ways to do that in different institutions and different channels through which we are remembering him and his work. Like, there are academia, scholars, there is the Tolkien estate, the Tolkien society, organizations and institutions which officially take care of his legacy. Then there are different memorials and different um, memorial places which are important, where he lived, where he was buried, and stuff like that. And then there are rituals and commemorations like birthday toast or any allié. But fandom is also one way of, creating and perpetuating cultural memory related to Tolkien, disseminating all the content and keeping it alive in a way. So that is also important aspect of cultural memory, which is usually neglected since fandom studies became important topic in academia since 90s maybe, which is not a small amount of time, like it's almost 30 years now. But anyway, it's a new field of study, and it's growing, and the media and digital technologies are changing very fast, so it's not something which is easily investigated because it's changing constantly, I guess.
Yeah, God, that sounds absolutely fascinating. Because I actually hadn't thought of that aspect of it, the way in which we are almost cultural gatekeepers of Tolkien's work. Not in the sense of excluding others, but in the sense of preserving
Yeah.
who he is and his memory and his works, and you know, continuing to bring them to the world and making sure that in some ways he almost stays alive for us.
Yeah. Um, and that's what the main goal of heritage theory is to, you know, make sure the heritage survives. So that's why fandom is, and Tolkien case is a good case study to see what are all the channels which enable for his works and his legacy to stay relevant and live on. And it's also interesting from the point of view of art theory, like what is the status of artworks which are basically derivative, inspired by Tolkien. So how do you treat them from the point of art theory? So there are different aspects of it which can be interesting, and it's fairly different when compared to well, let's say, classic Tolkien scholarship, which is mostly related to language and literature questions. Some of it is related to fandom, but like the majority of it is more related to investigating Tolkien's work itself, not interpretations and adaptations, and things which are usually seen as not that important because they are not the original text, source material, they are someone's interpretation. But from my point of view, those interpretations are also important and can tell you a lot. And they are one of the forms of keeping cultural memory of any work, like not only Tolkien work, but any work alive.
That really does sound fascinating, and yeah, I think that the idea of looking at Tolkien as part of cultural history is really important, really significant. And my mind is now buzzing with all manner of different questions. Like, for example, is it possible to track differences between people in different countries and the way in which they are preserving Tolkien as part of cultural history for themselves? Is that different from one country to another, from one culture to another? Has it changed over time? Are you tracking that at all?
That is possible probably, but it requires more people to do that sort of research. And to do it in different countries, it requires, knowledge of those languages, and so it requires a number of researchers who are interested in it. So hopefully that will happen someday. Because basically it's like history of reception of someone's work, and yeah, that is also a field of study which has its own history, but it's not easy to do it. With my surveys, because they were international, but I had a question, which country you're from. So I have a sort of insight into how many people from each country have given the answer. The majority of respondents were from the USA and the UK, which is expected and makes sense. But I tried when I was doing the survey I tracked basically all Tolkien societies in European countries, and not only European, also in Asia and South America. I did Facebook um, promotion of the service. So basically, I found all the groups um, related to Tolkien from different countries and contacted them, and asked them to, post a survey for their members. So I was trying to create some sort of overall picture about international fandom community, but I'm not sure that is possible only by one survey. It has to be more of them, and it would have to be done via different channels, not only Facebook. So yeah, it is possible though, I guess. Today, more than in years, before the internet, I guess it's much easier to do it now.
Well, yes, I suppose. Yay for the internet for that. That's for sure. Yeah, that sounds so interesting. I'm really looking forward to hearing far more about that study as your study continues, Mina.
Okay.
So this almost sounds like a really silly question to end on. Then, would you ever recommend Tolkien's work?
Yeah, why do you have that question at all? Like, people who are doing these interviews are surely people who would recommend it.
So I suppose really the question is, why would you recommend Tolkien's
Okay.
work to somebody?
Well, I don't think everybody would enjoy it, because not everybody has the same taste, obviously, and the inclination toward enjoying in fictional worlds, especially in fantasy. So yeah, I would recommend it, but probably to people um, who are already interested in it. I don't know, because it's difficult to change someone's opinion. Usually, when I talk to people who are not into fantasy, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to read anything which has dragons and magic and stuff like that. That's not real life." Um, so it's difficult to persuade those people that they should try, give it a try. Like, those books are actually about real life stuff, just told in a different way. Magic and dragons and all that stuff are just some aspects of it which are not crucial. Crucial are some universal subjects which are friendship, love, the fight between good and bad, or um, some values and topics which are relevant for our everyday lives. That's because Tolkien is relevant, not because he had dragons in his stories, So he is important because he's talking about some deeply human conditions and dilemmas and, well, let's say, quests. And I'm missing words here because I'm obviously not a native speaker, but yeah, I have them in my mind. Yeah, I
It's
guess.
about Tolkien being relevant today to plenty of people because so many of his the themes of his work are simply continually relevant.
Yeah, because those topics and those values are universal. They're not something which can be changed, like, um, after a certain period of time. Those are topics which have um, intrigued and bothered humanity since the beginning of time, probably. And they are going to continue to be relevant forever. So
Yes.
I don't think Tolkien is ever going to become less relevant, or I think his popularity and importance are going to continue to grow. And also the new media and new interpretations, adaptations, like Peter Jackson's films and now this new Amazon TV series, they're just going to bring more people and introduce more people to Tolkien's works, and that is a good thing in my opinion.
Yes.
Because it's just going to be more relevant, expand, gain new admirers. So basically keep him even more present in our cultural memory.
Yeah, I have to agree. I really do. I think that Tolkien will remain relevant and important to us for the foreseeable future, simply because his themes are universal. And I too am looking forward to the new Amazon series, because I'm really interested to see what they do with it. And also because like you, I believe it will bring more people to Tolkien, and hopefully those who haven't read the books, who watch the series, will be brought to the books. And, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And also, you probably are aware of that sort of conflict in Tolkien fandom between those who have read the books and those who have only seen the film. It's interesting for me that, for example, in my head, I can completely keep those things separate. Like all the interpretations of Tolkien, they affect my imagination to an extent, but when I'm reading the book, it's still, the way I imagine things is still affected by his words, by his writing, and by my own imagination more than by different interpretations. So, and many people in my surveys answered a similar thing, although many have answered that they regret influence of films on their own way of imagining Tolkien. So I guess it's different for everyone.
Yeah, very true. Well, on that note, Mina, I want to thank you very much for giving us your time and sharing with us your thoughts on Tolkien, what brought you to Tolkien, and why you love his work so much. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
We are so thankful that we have such gracious scholars and fans who want to share their Tolkien experience with us and with you.
We have a lot of fun making these podcasts.
So much fun. It's always exciting to talk to fans and scholars about their Tolkien experience.
If you want to know more about the ways to connect with this episode's guest that they mentioned in this interview, we provide show notes at tolkienexperience.com. Also, don't forget to follow the podcast on your favourite social media sites.
That's right. We're on Facebook as Tolkien Experience, and also on Twitter as @TolkienEXP. So don't forget to like, follow, share, and comment, because we love interacting with you just as much as we enjoy talking with our guests. You can also follow our personal Twitter accounts. I am @LukeB.Shelton.
You can also look for me on Twitter, where I am @AaronLPalmadill. You can find the podcast on all major podcast services, including Apple, Stitcher, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We truly hope that, in a way, it contributes to your own Tolkien experience.